My bee people, how's everybody doing? This is Bruce Rodriguez with the Might Bomb Beekeeping Podcast. I just recently learned a new term in the podcast broadcasting biz. I think it's a term. I heard it on a recent podcast on the Beekeeper's Corner by Kevin England. He called it housekeeping, and that is where, I guess, when you don't have a really big subject to talk about, you talk about a bunch of little subjects and string them all together. And that's been my problem for the past couple weeks, ever since coming back from California. So I love that idea, and I'm going to go ahead and give that a try and do a little house cleaning. I really didn't know what that meant. I thought maybe on Google they would give you a good definition for this meaning of it, but all I got was that means when you clean your house, you get in there and you start cleaning. That's house cleaning. No one, it doesn't have a definition for podcasts or broadcasting that I could find. But he calls them, each subject, he calls them roundtables. But I'm not going to steal that. I'm just going to say these are my things. And the first thing that I've been dying to talk about for a couple weeks is the Natural Beekeeping Conference that Honeylove put on out in LA a couple weeks ago. I got some good news and some bad news. And the bad news first is that I did not do any interviews out there. That was my big plan, to go out there, meet all these cool people, which I did meet a lot of cool people. That's the part of the good news. But I just never got to do any interviews because the situation was just never right. People were kind of always moving around, preparing for their presentations, and then we were in loud areas, and it was just weird. And also, I'd never done an interview yet. I still haven't, but it just never happened. But I met a lot of cool people. I didn't want to say make a lot of friends. Hopefully they're my friends. But that's the bad news. I didn't get any interviews. I'm sorry about that. But hopefully when I talk to some of those people in the future, I can say, hey, you remember me? Maybe I'll get to do some interviews. But the good news for me, at least, not for anybody else, was that I really got to meet a lot of people that they were just cool. Really, really nice people. There were no jerks. I got to meet Michael Bush. We didn't really talk a lot. It was just weird sitting there. I was sitting there at the hotel bar kind of area, and I was talking to Solomon Parker, who I already knew pretty well, and Sam Comfort, who I already met before, who's also cool. I don't like saying cool too much, but he's a cool dude. And at one point, Sam's just like, yeah, I called up Michael. He's coming down. And I'm like, Michael who? Yeah, Mike Bush. I'm like, oh my goodness. And he just comes walking right up, gets a drink or whatever. It was kind of surreal, really, meeting all those cool, there I go again, meeting all those people that I really look up to. And as of up to that point, they'd only been people on YouTube or in books that I read about. And it was just really strange, but in a good way. I also got to finally meet Angela Tullerson, the other moderator with us on the Facebook, Treatmentfree Facebook group. She just comes running up to me, gives me a big squeezy hug, pecks me on the cheek, and says, I gotta go. And just takes off. That was our first 5 seconds of meeting, so that was funny. But yeah, we hung out. Also, at one point I was sitting there, and I hear a little voice behind me. Oh, my name's Mandy Shaw. And I was just like, oh my goodness, that's Mandy Shaw from Beekeeper Confidential. I was like, just couldn't believe it. It was really cool. I ended up meeting her later on. I just had to walk up and say, my name's Bruce Rodriguez, and I'm just a big fan of your show. And she was just extremely nice. Talked to me for like 20 minutes. Gave me a really cool pep talk about doing my podcast and making it my own. And then she just pulled up my podcast and subbed right away. So that was very nice of her. And man, I just met a lot of people. I know I'm going to forget a bunch of names. I met a guy named Paul Cronshaw who came up to me and gave me some feedback about my Randy Oliver episode, the one previous to this. And a lot of people were talking to me about that. I didn't get any bad feedback about that, believe it or not. Most people are just like, I can't believe you did that. I mean, it's just what I do. I don't know. I didn't see anything strange about it. I also met a lady named Fanta Malino, who was also just like the nicest lady ever. She gave a really great presentation. I have the worst memory. I didn't take notes. I mean, I was just taking it all in. But she had a really good presentation. I'm sure we're going to be seeing a lot of her in the future. Who else? Les Crowder was there. His presentation was probably one of my favorites. That dude is funny. I mean, he had everybody laughing because he's so quiet. I didn't even want to go up and talk to him because I was like, he's so shy. He's going to just not want to talk to me. But when he gets up on the stage, man, he takes control. It was just funny. He gave a great presentation. He actually called it the myth of mite bombs, I think. And he ended up only mentioning mites for about 3 seconds. I mean, he gave mite bombs all the attention they deserved. It was just in passing. And I just thought it was kind of hysterical. And his stories were really great too. Who else did I meet there? Man, I'm just bombing now here. Yeah, Les Crowder, Michael Bush, Sam Comfort. Yeah, it was just a great time. I'm really bummed that I didn't do interviews, but I'll get them. So then the next thing is my recent episode where I just kind of responded to Randy Oliver's presentation. A lot of people were telling me that they really liked that. It's funny because that episode has hundreds of listens now and hundreds of views on YouTube, but my subscribers are a very small percentage of those views. So there's probably a lot of hate listening going on, but I didn't get anybody that felt bad enough to go ahead and tell me anything wrong. I might have to do something like that again. I mean, it was pretty easy. I haven't heard anyone else really do anything like that, and yeah, I'm gonna do that one again. But the funny thing is, it might have been yesterday or the day before. Somebody asked me on Facebook if Randy Oliver changed his position at all, since the video that I talked about was a few years old. So, for the heck of it, I went to YouTube and typed in Randy Oliver 2020, and as luck would have it, somebody uploaded a video 4 hours before I did that search. And in that one, he's talking about a thing that he's doing where he's trying to see which of his colonies are keeping mite numbers down really low and ones that he won't treat. So he started with 1,500 colonies, and after a whole year of mite washing, just constant mite washing and testing, he determined that 20 of his colonies never did require a treatment, and those 20 always had their mite numbers at either 0 or 1 out of 1,500. So 20 out of 1,500. I'm not about to get the calculator out, but the way he did it was any of the ones that didn't meet that very strict mite count criteria were treated and just removed from future breeding. I'm not sure what his plan is, but what he runs into now is a situation where he said he can't really breed off of those 20 because the other 1,480 colonies that he has are all completely non-resistant, would absolutely die without treatments. So on one hand, you have to think, wow, that says a lot about the caliber of bees that he has there. Because I have let me see, I have 1/20th of the colonies that he has, but I have way more colonies that survive without any treatment, so I don't even bother counting mites. But that's just me being picky. The problem that he has is he can't breed. At least that's what he says in his most recent presentation. So I would think, I mean, I'm nobody to give somebody like him any advice, but I would say, how about taking those 20 and take them far away from your other bees and do some breeding there and see what happens. And then just keep doing that. But again, when you're only counting mites, there's other things that can kill bees that you're not selecting for. So I really don't know how that'll work. With me, in my situation, just letting weak bees die, in just a matter of a couple seasons, I have very, very high survival. Not that I would take a low survival as a hit. It's just that that's the way it bees sometimes, there's nothing you can do about that. But this winter is turning out to be a really good one again. Today we had a warm up. It went up to 58 degrees. I got to walk around and see everybody who's still living and doing really well, and seeing some that didn't. And as always, there's some weird shockers. There's ones that I gave no chance at all to live, and they're just really strong. And then there's ones that are just stacked with honey, were packed with bees. They were already from overwintered mothers and grandmothers for a couple seasons, and they're stone dead. So there's always going to be surprises, but overall it's still looking really good. There's still a lot of winter left, but I'm not worried at all. It's February, early February, and this time of the year I know that I can get really annoying. Every other sentence when I talk to people is just I'm dying to get out there and catch swarms and mess with bees, and they're just sick of hearing about it. But that's me. That's just, it's still pretty far, but it's getting close. So that's what I'm thinking about. So another small thing, a couple episodes back I mentioned that there was a Canadian beekeeper conventional. I don't know if he was a commercial beekeeper or what, but he presented himself as a pretty big deal, and he went straight after a couple other beekeepers that I'm not sure if they want me to talk about it, but they forwarded me some emails. Just a really real classy guy, this guy. Just was trying to insult the living daylights out of these people, just bombarding them with all kinds of ridiculous questions, and just belittling anyone who does, who's trying to keep bees without treatments. And he was extended my contact information and was invited to come on here and let me have it, and I already talked about it. And he declined to do that. I'm sure it'll eventually happen, but he declined. I'm not surprised. Maybe a little surprised. Usually, these guys, they're ready. They know they're gonna try to hit me with the exact same things I've heard 10,000 times and have the perfect response to everyone. Not, I've got enough practice in it, and it usually is just gonna leave them stuttering. But so that never did happen. But it's a wide open invitation. And I forgot to mention at the beginning of this here episode that the Mite Bomb Beekeeping Podcast can now be heard on, I think it's like 15 different platforms or so. I kind of lost count. I ended up going over to Anchor.fm to upload podcasts, and they distribute it to everyone else. Google, Apple, iTunes. I'll just you name it, you can find it. So if whichever one you're listening to this on, you could be on Podbean or anything. If you want to listen to them on anything else without an app, you can just Google it. It's going to come right up. And that was pretty cool. So coming up, I have 2 interviews. I don't really want to call them interviews because even though I think that works great when I listen to other podcasts, they're always great. But for me, the standard, how many hives do you have? How long have you had bees? And what got you started in beekeeping? That's cool, but everybody does that. And I just don't want to do that. This isn't really an interview podcast, really, only because there's plenty of those, and they're all good. But I don't really want to do those. I just want to have more like a chat, If you just happen to mention, who you are or what you do, that's cool. I just don't. I'm not, Barbara Walters. I don't want to just be digging stuff out of people. So it's gonna be somebody that either speaks my language or completely doesn't speak my language, and that's how my quote that they're gonna be guest hosts, really. I want to talk about things. I want to be asked things. I want to ask things back. But I'm not trying to do a showcase on some special apiary or something like that. It's just there's plenty of other podcasts that do that. But coming up, the first one should be tomorrow. And this is a person that I talked to on Facebook in the group, kind of a backyard beekeeper, 20 or so colonies. I'm not really sure, but I want to try this guest hosting thing out. And then coming up soon after that is somebody, a really definitely a well-respected treatment-free beekeeper that I have never heard on any other broadcasts of any kind, really. Maybe I didn't look hard enough, but I just haven't heard any, and I think it's going to be pretty cool. Again, if you ever notice, there's some people who I'm always talking about forums, Facebook forums or whatever. There's always people that, like me, who can say something, can make a statement about treatment-free beekeeping or whatever, about not treating bees, and everybody will just pile on. They just jump on me or whoever else. It's cool. I'm fine with that. But then you notice there's certain people who get a level of respect that when they say things, they don't get that. And I always wondered how that works, but we'll have to find out because I really don't know a lot about this potential interviewee guest host. But hopefully that goes well. That's coming up. And the next thing, not the next round table, but something I was thinking about while I was walking around today, looking at which colonies are still alive and which ones are not alive, is when I do eventually have a guest host type person who is coming on clearly to take me down several notches. I know that there's going to be some serious language barriers as far as the way treaters talk about bees and the way someone like myself talks about bees. And I thought it would be, I don't know if it'd be funny, maybe it'll be funny, but I wanted to kind of say in an episode before that some of these things that are inevitably going to come up. So it's kind of like I wanted to have a bit of a dog whistle. I wasn't really sure what sound I could make, whether it's my own thing here or if I was to go on anyone else's. There has to be some type of noise. I don't know if it could be a hiccup or not a burp, but maybe a something like that. And for example, when treating beekeepers, always like to, the first thing they say when you say, yeah, I don't treat bees, I mean, I keep bees without treatment, right away they'll try to phrase it nicely, like as if they're just really inquiring because they want to know, and it's not why. But they'll say something along the lines of, well, what are your average yearly losses? And to me, that whole and every word in that question, except for what at the beginning, there's a problem with almost every single word. It's like you can't begin to answer it. Because if we're in the current winter and the past winter, where I'm having, just so happened to be having, quite a good number of colonies survive. Sorry about that. I forgot to turn off my notifications. But to me, I was thinking about it. I was standing there looking at 5 colonies straight in a row that I have on the back of my barn, and all 5 of them were alive. If I would have just kept 5 colonies and kept only those 5, I could just say I had 100% survival. Because what do those 5 have to do? What at all do they have to do with the other 55, 60? They have nothing to do with those other ones. And then I went to another area in my yard where there were 3 of them side by side that were dead. And the exact same thing. I thought, wow, what if I only kept 3 and my luck was that I only had these 3? I'd have to hang my head and tell everyone I have 100% losses. To me, to get hung up on percentages, especially percentages of past years, like going back 10 years, I don't like to say stupid that much, but to me it's just really stupid to say, hold on, you want to know my average losses. So that means I have to take my most recent few years, which are great, and average them in with my first 3 or 4 years of keeping bees. For what? What does that even tell you? Is that going to tell you anything? It's not. So that's the first part. The averaging is silly. But then for me, even to call them losses, I have not had any losses in the stock market because I'm not in the stock market. I didn't pay for any stocks. In bees, I have not paid for any of my bees. What I make from honey or from removals has easily paid for what equipment I've piled up by a long shot. And just the amount of fun that I have messing with bees, you can't put a price tag on that. The only way you lose bees is when, I've said this before, it's when you buy bees and they're your investment. That's how you lose bees. That's how you lose in bees. And this is not a coping mechanism for me. I don't want to avoid a question like that because I'm trying to cope with quote unquote losses or trying to be evasive. Like, I seriously don't lose anything messing with bees. I only gain stuff. And then to call them another word in the sentence, they're not my losses. Certain bees are going to live, and the ones that die, they're not fit. That's the bees' problem. That's those particular colonies' problems. So yeah, that's one thing that I know right away when I get someone on here. That's usually the first one out of the gate. What are your yearly average colony losses? And it kind of stymies me because I'm like, how do you even answer that? So for anybody who's listening to this episode and will be listening to future ones, just think of me talking about this when that gets asked, because I'm going to be thinking about it And what am I going to say to the person? Oh, do me a favor, go back and listen to episode number, whatever this is. So I'm not going to do that. And they wouldn't have listened to it, but I'll do my best. Another thing that I know I'm going to hear is, how do you know that you have mite tolerant colonies if you don't do mite counts? And what are your mite numbers? And to ask something like that assumes that, first of all, that I do those, which I don't. Secondly, it assumes that mite counts are the only thing that determines whether a colony is going to live or die. And that's also not true. So I'll have to be honest and say I don't count mites, so I don't know what my mite numbers are, and I don't really care, because my bees have to survive everything that comes at them, except for American foul brood. I'm not even going to talk about that. No one around here has had that. I've never had any signs of it, but let's just put that off for now. So I'm not sure where that part will go. Bees could probably do many things to live with mites, and it might not even, a lot of people will say, treaters will say, it's not the mites, it's the viruses that they get. Well, if it's not the mites, then why are you treating for mites if it's just the viruses, But nobody wants to have an answer for that. And it also wouldn't explain why on the forums, again, post after post, people showing pictures of their dead colonies, and the first 5 people say, what were your mite counts and did you treat your bees? And nothing makes me laugh more than when the person who posted right away responds to them, yes, I treated religiously. I'm not new at this. I treated them. Their counts were at 0 or 1 or whatever. And then there's just nothing after that. It's like, okay, yeah, what's your next question? So we can talk about mites if they want to. Of course, we can't forget what there is always going to be brought up, not only by people who've had bees for a little while, but even brand new beekeepers are just, I've been hearing it from brand new beekeepers who lost their very first colonies over winter, and they lost them because they bought them and they did everything and they died. I'm going to hear about mite bombs, the namesake of this podcast. And as my yard and any yard can prove, what I have no treated bees here. I don't even pretend, I don't do anything that can even be vaguely interpreted as a treatment on my bees. Maybe you think putting them in a box is a treatment, and I've gone through that already. Or feeding, you might think feeding is a treatment. No, if you do think that, you're just wrong. And I was just thinking, when any of these questions come up in a talk, I'm just going to dedicate my response to my Randy episode, and I'm just going to say, really? And then I'll answer. That's my dog whistle. So you know that I'm as soon as you hear really, my brain is just hurting, because that means I'm getting confronted with the same weak arguments over and over again. So yeah, that's what it's going to be. I'm not going to forget that. All right, well, I hope you like my little house cleaning rant here. It kind of just came up off the top of my head. I really wanted to say hi again to people from the Beekeeping Conference. It was just a lot of fun. I wanted to say, anybody who has thoughts about the Randy episode, go ahead and leave them. On Anchor, you can actually, there's a little button you can hit to where you can leave me a voice message, and I can put it right into an episode. And speaking of Randy, him and believe it or not, him and Les Crowder must be going on a tour together or something, because they're going to be at a local-ish bee club giving a presentation. And I would go, but I'm not paying $75 to go hear that. And the video that I watched from the other day was, I think both of them presented at the same club. So that's what's coming up. All right. Take care and look forward to hearing your feedback. See you on the next one.